Let's go. Anna, I was honored to be on your podcast not too long ago, and finally you get to be on this one. Welcome to When the Cleats Come Off.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks for having me. What a full circle moment. I know you came on my first season, and I'm so happy to come on your podcast now.
Yes, and so much has happened for both of us, really, since I was on. But you were, that perfect guest that I think right now a lot of people just need to hear and be inspired by, youth athletes who are now becoming like preparing for the real world and journalism and media. And this is all stuff that, excites you, lights you up. And you literally are just a couple weeks from coming back from Paris, covering the Olympics. I can't wait to get into some of that. But overall, like, what is, a way to describe that experience for you in just a couple sentences, if you could.
Yeah, I think that's a hard task to answer with just a few sentences, but in short, I just say it was really an awe-inspiring moment and so eye-opening to be able to see hundreds of athletes from all different countries around the globe coming together in Paris, all from different sports too. The fact that I was able to cover so many different sports in such a short amount of time was truly incredible and definitely an experience I will never forget.
Yeah, I remember following all of your Instagram stories the entire time. And it was actually that prompted me to want to get you on right away because you got to see firsthand some of the biggest moments in the Olympics, the ones that we saw from like hundreds of thousands of miles away, but you were up close and personal. And how cool is it like being able to just be around and probably just like bump into some of like the biggest names? Like, are there some big names that you walked by or saw that you were like, oh my gosh, this is Simone Biles, this is whoever?
Well, I mean, you named the GOAT herself, Simone Biles, and I would say it has to start there for me. I've always loved watching Simone Biles. I can remember vividly when I did competitive gymnastics before I went into softball. I watched the 2016 Rio Olympics at my gym with my teammates, watching Simone come on the scene right there, and that's where she really made a name for herself. And so the fact that I got to see her in person for the first time was truly incredible on qualifications. And I saw her later on as well, but then that day I like saw her walk by me and I was like, "Oh my goodness, like this is insane." And so I feel like that has to be at the top of the list, but another one that was really cool as well was the opportunity to interview Steph Curry later on during the basketball rounds as well, and that was just so cool because he's a North Carolina native from Davidson, he's making an impact, and he's just somebody that seemed very personable and really sweet. So, there definitely were so many different ones, but those are just a couple to name a few.
That is incredible. I love that. So, can you actually share with us how you got this opportunity to be able to cover some of the Olympics?
Yes. So I feel like that is a long-ended question, so I'll try to do it in the
That's
shortest way
okay.
possible. But I think it really started with when I got involved with Sports Illustrated Kids when I was younger. I was a Sports Illustrated Kids kid reporter starting at 14 and covered a ton of different sporting events throughout my time there. And so that's really when I started doing sports journalism related things and knew like this is something I want to do long term outside of just high school, like beyond college as well. And so once I did other things, including the National Dog Show, which I know you'll probably ask me about later on,
I did tell you I wanted to ask about that. Yep.
I sort of had my mindset that was the moment that I was like, I really want to find a way to cover the Paris Olympics. And that was 2021. I didn't know how that was going to happen, but I was like, I know God can help me figure it out. Not sure how, not sure what it'll look like, but I'm going to try to work as hard as I can towards it. And so then I went through the college process a little over a year later, just trying to decide where the best fit would be for me. And UNC, where I'm at now, which I was debating between going there and a few other schools, one of the things that really stood out to me from them was that I was told they were bringing a team to the Olympics, and I was like, "Wow, that's really cool." Like, is that my way of getting to the Olympics? And I was like, I'm not sure at that time. And that wasn't the only reason why I picked UNC, but it definitely was a factor that I weighed into to deciding. And so, starting in the fall of last year, which was my freshman year at UNC, I knew the professor who was in charge of selecting the team and he's in charge of leading a sports show on our campus called Sports Extra, and I that's usually an upperclassman show. Most seniors do it, a couple juniors, but I was like, well, I don't have much time to prove myself. Like I have all the other people that are being considered are people that are 2, 3 years older than me. And so I got on the wait list first day of class, and I think I'm the only freshman to do it first semester ever, but I was like, I gotta make it happen. Like I need to show what I can do. And so got involved there as well as a few other things and just tried to show what I was capable of doing throughout the course of the fall semester, in addition to doing things with our student newspaper for the sports desk and a productions team. And so that was really sort of the path into doing it once I got to UNC, and then found out in January of this year of 2024 that I had been selected for the team.
Oh my gosh. You are so gritty. Like, you could have easily been like, well, like freshmen don't take this. That's just how it's going to be. But you're like, no, there is going to be a way and I'm going to find a way to do it. How have you, become such a goal? I don't want to say you're goal driven unless you agree with it, but like that goal sounds like it just drove every single decision for you. Like, how did that come to be? You having these goals and like doing whatever it takes to get to them. Like, where did that start? Where did that come from? Sports?
I think you put it perfectly. I honestly think it started with sports, Ashley, because I've loved sports all my life, but I wanted to get involved in sports other than playing sports. But as an athlete, as you know yourself firsthand, like you want to have goals, you don't want to just be complacent. And so I think it really started there with my sports career of just playing sports, wanted to be the best I can be and not just be an average athlete. And I think it started there and then translated into academics as well as things with journalism and where I am today with that, because I have high goals and aspirations for myself, big dreams too. And so I think step by step, those just sort of started as smaller ones, but then have grown into bigger goals and dreams that I sort of steadily am trying to work towards.
That's incredible. So I know you mentioned the Sports Illustrated kids. What prompted you to kind of like want to go down that route? Was there like a moment in your life where you're like, I want to cover sports? Like, who was that influential person maybe for you? Or what was that moment that allowed you to really kind of want to start, dabbling into this and now you're all in?
That's a great question. So it's a funny story, actually. My mom and I talk about it sometimes and laugh about it. But I've been playing sports and I've recently retired from gymnastics because I had elbow issues, which were the equivalent of Tommy Johns for MLB pitchers. And since I hadn't grown, I couldn't have the surgery yet without having arthritis because my bones just hadn't had my growth spurt yet. And so I'd stopped doing gymnastics and was trying to figure out what sport to do next. And I was sort of wanting to do more than just playing sports. And my mom somehow found it on the internet one day, this application for Sports Illustrated Kids. And I think I found it in 2018 and I had recently missed the deadline for it. So I was like, okay. And like then as a couple months went by, we were looking at it for the application for next year. And I looked at it a little bit. My mom more so was like encouraging, and I'm like, I don't think so. Like, there's no way I'm going to get it. And so, she encouraged it. I still did the application, did the stories that we had to give as examples. And then I found out in July of 2019 that I had been selected as one of 10 throughout the country. And that was sort of a really big moment for me since that was the beginning of my sports journalism career, because I knew I loved writing, but I knew I loved sports too. And I really wanted to see how that could combine, because writing is great for like academics, but not nearly as interesting as getting to cover some of the top athletes or events in sports. And so I think that was sort of where it was born and how I started with Sports Illustrated Kids.
That's so cool. So at the very beginning, was it scary starting
Oh,
something new?
it was terrifying. I mean, I can remember vividly, I covered the Pocono 400 as one of my first events. I had never known anything about racing or NASCAR. I was 14. I gotten a credential and I was like, wow, like, okay. And like my parents are with me because I'm a minor the whole time. So I'd always have a parent, but they were both there, which was sweet. And I just like stood there in like not like a locker room, but it was an area that they had different racers sitting on chairs and you could just have little mix zone type interviews. And I was like just waiting around and I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Like, who am I supposed to talk to? What am I supposed to ask? And some nice lady named Deja was willing to, she sort of took me under her wing and helped me like walk up to some of the players and ask them some questions, and so that's sort of where it started, but it was scary for sure, and it definitely took more than just that one event to get comfortable talking to these athletes across different sports.
Yes, and thank goodness you had that experience. And shout out to Deja. Like, who knows where you'd be if you if you didn't have her to kind of guide you. And now, I mean, I'm sure there's opportunities for you to even help other people now in the field that you're like, hey, like, let's go talk to this person, or hey, like you look lost, like I got you. Like, do you feel like you find yourself as a Deja every once in a while now?
I would say so. I would say I feel that way sometimes at school with like friends or different people that I know that are looking for different opportunities outside the classroom to just be like, hey, I'm involved in this or helped with that, or just sort of giving some background of things I've done in the past that have helped me grow into the person that I am today related to reporting, but outside of that as well. And I think that wouldn't be possible without some of the things I've done.
Amazing. So let's go. Was the dog show, the National Dog Show, which you did on Peacock, you can share a little bit more about it. Was that like the next big gig that you had after Sports Illustrated Kids, or were there any others that led up to it?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I covered a lot of big sporting events for Sports Illustrated Kids between the beginning and the dog show and then after the dog show because I worked with them for like over 4 years. But I would say that was a different thing. That was the next big thing. But between then I got to cover like Little League World Series, and then the biggest one between I would say the Little League World Series and the dog show was when I covered the 2019 Major League Baseball World Series in
Mm,
Washington, D.C. That one was a big one for me.
so cool. You had some big time interviews at that. Who did you interview at that World Series?
Yeah, that's a good one. That brings me back a special memory because I was so tiny back then. I was like 14. Funny story, I had security called on me because they didn't know if I was legit. But it's okay. My mom and I love sharing that story to friends and stuff to this day. But I was able to interview Garrett Cole. I mean, the names are endless, but Trey Turner, so many different amazing athletes from the Astros, Jose Altuve, um, and also the Nationals as well. And so it was really fun. It was definitely an amazing experience getting to go to so many different World Series games because I grew up watching the World Series on TV every year, but then going in person, but still being only 14 was like truly incredible.
That's so awesome. Do you have a team that you follow in MLB?
Yes, I am a big Washington Nationals fan, so the fact that I got to cover them as my first World Series was amazing.
Wow.
But then I had to try to pretend that I, like, wasn't a fan because I was technically a reporter, right? So I'm, like, on the press conferences and on the field doing pregame interviews, and I'm like, "Okay," and I, like, stay reporter, like, even though I'm 14, like, I wanna be a fan, right? So there were some times when I'd be sitting in our, like, overflow press box that I was, like, sad because the Nationals lost all 3 of them that I covered because the 4 in Houston, they all won. So thankfully they won the World Series, but that was the first ever major sporting event of any sport that the away team won every single game. So I was like,
Hmm.
"Okay, I can't be too sad when I go to press conferences after the game because they just lost again."
Yeah, that's tough. Oh my gosh. So, how do you prepare for these? Like, how do, because I think one thing that I admire about great journalists is, out of nowhere, they can think of some really good questions. Is it like an on the spot type of thing for you, or do you have like a long list of questions that you are writing down throughout the game? Like, how do you prepare for these post game interviews?
Yeah, I think that depends on the sport and depending on the situation, on if it's a story based on the event or a story particularly focusing on an athlete. But I think I've grown immensely over the past 4 years too with what that preparation looks like. So I would say more so at the beginning when I was 14, maybe even 15, I did have more of lists of questions of a couple different ones or jotting down notes from the game as well. But I think since then it's sort of changed to more so like thinking on the fly some of the time. I definitely still take notes and want to have an idea of what I generally want to talk about, but I'm able to be more comfortable thinking on the fly a lot more quickly than I was beforehand. So I don't have to make as many like notes or questions to stick to that so that I can like possibly change too, if that makes sense.
I'm sure a lot of it is like reading the other person too, like having an idea of maybe something that, lights them up. You probably do research prior, like with specific people you interview of like topics that kind of light them up that they like to to talk about. So do you do a little bit of preparation on like who it is? And then like I'm sure your job is also to try to like ask questions they're not used to being asked. So like how did those come into play too? Because I think it's such a cool, a thing to be able to just kind of have somebody talk about things that, that light them up, but that they're not always asked.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think on the preparation side of things, my podcast has come into play in terms of me uh, getting a better idea of what preparation research looks like. So that's helped me with questions and interviews for Sports Illustrated Kids or things I've done with MLB.com. But I would say, in terms of interviews, yes, I'd love to research. I think that's sort of one of my biggest things I pride myself in because I want to be as prepared as I can for an interview and act as knowledgeable as I can because I know they know I'm younger, but that doesn't mean that I should just ask younger questions in my head because I want to show why I'm capable of interviewing, World Series champion, Hall of Famer, you name it. And so I think for me, preparing is just as important, if not more important, than actually talking to the player so that I'm comfortable because I don't know where the interview might go depending on who it is and what the situation is. Do I have 1 minute to talk to him? Do I have 10? You know what I mean? And so it's different for every situation. But I would say I love researching and trying to find questions, as you sort of alluded to, that are out of the ordinary or things that might not be asked about as much. And so that could be related to things they did as a kid. If I'm doing things for Sports Illustrated kids that want more relation to, hey, how can a kid relate to you to be like, you were in my shoes one day? Or it could be things they enjoy as hobbies outside of their sport. And so I think it just sort of depends, but that's something, different things that I like to do to sort of prepare myself for those interviews.
Speaking of your podcast, one of my favorite episodes that you did was with Dusty Baker. I'm pretty sure he was in line at some sort of a drive-through during your interview, but it was classic and awesome. And just, knowing in like after that interview is when he won the World Series. So like seeing, that relationship with you and him come to life was like so awesome. And also, like, how did you land that interview? How do you land interviews with these just incredible people? Like you've had Jessica Mendoza on, I think. You've had some of the bigs. So how do you get them? I'm taking notes over here.
Well, thanks for the question and thanks for the kind words as well. But those two are definitely two of my favorite people in the sports media world, but two of the kindest people to me as well. Both of them go back a little bit later, but I'll start with Jessica Mendoza. She's been the biggest role model to me, a huge mentor as well in my life, which I truly appreciate so much. But I met her when I covered the Little League World Series for the first time in 2019. And SI Kids wanted me to do a story because she was doing Sunday Night Baseball things with ESPN at the time, and obviously but I know as well there's not many women in the realm of sports broadcasting. It's growing and it's so exciting to see the growth even since I was 14 and started. Over the past 5 years, it's grown immensely, but there's still so much more that we need to get to. But Jessica's just been so sweet to me. So I had my first interview with her and she was the first Olympian I ever like interviewed. And so I was really nervous, but I have this like sweet picture and like we met there. And so it's been really sweet to see how our relationship has grown and just her kindness to me over the past 5 years since then, if that's coming on the podcast or like seeing her at the World Series or different things like that. She's just been super sweet to me. And so she was kind enough to just give me one of her contacts when we met, I think at first, or help me get in contact with somebody that I could reach out to talk to her. And then that's sort of where I was able to get in relation to her. And then Dusty Baker goes back even further. Related to being a Nationals fan. He was the Nationals manager when I went to spring training for the first time with my dad in 2017. And so I met him there as like a little 12-year-old fan. I think he signed my Nationals jersey and some baseballs as well. And he's really sweet because I was one of the only girl fans there. There was a lot of other boys my age. And
Hmm.
so he's really kind there. And then I met him again once I started with Sports Illustrated Kids and was doing an interview when I went back to spring training right after the World Series that spring, 1 week or less than a week before COVID hit. And so we were there, like, and the game after us, they were like, "Oh, we're shutting down after this." And we're like, "What is going on?" And then obviously COVID hit. But I saw Dusty there, and so he's been really sweet to me since. So I saw him there and then started with the podcast. He's actually my only repeat podcast guest, which is really sweet because I'd seen him at the 2022 World Series because that was my other World Series I had the pleasure of covering since I'm from Pennsylvania, and it was in Philly for some of the games. And so I saw him there, and then after that, I was like, "I have to get you back on the podcast. You finally won your World Series championship as a manager, like, you need to come back on." And so it was really funny because I had some people in the industry from, like, ESPN or other people I've met, journalists or broadcasters that were like, "How did you land that interview with Dusty after the World Series? Like, we couldn't even get him." And I was like, "I don't know, thankfully
Connections.
he was kind
I
enough to
love
give
it.
me his time." And so those are 2 really amazing people that have been super sweet to me over the past 5 plus years.
That's amazing. And to be frank, or to be honest, I guess here, I've only listened to the first one. So I have to, as soon as this is done, I think I'm going to turn on episode 2 with Dusty with you. But I just love knowing that it really is connections. Like that's how you get your foot in the door anywhere. And you didn't hesitate. You were like, hey, come on my podcast. Let's go. And calling your shot is, it's half the battle. So that's awesome that you just did it. You're like, let's go. People are like, what? How do we get Dusty's contact? I'm sure they're all texting you like, hey, can you send me his number?
No, he's
That's so
really
cool.
sweet. And yeah, it's super cool for sure. And I just love having the opportunity to get to highlight them because there's
Yeah.
so many amazing people out there that we often focus on just their accolades on the sports field or if they're manager or whatnot. And so it's really cool to get to know, as you know, since you've done this a lot on your podcast as well, but share who they are as people as well.
hmm It's such an important piece.
Mhm.
So you've actually gotten to know a lot of different athletes and coaches, and I specifically want to talk about the athlete because you get to see them in a different light. And one of my favorite things to do, and probably one of yours too, is after a game, I love post-game interviews. I also love the interviews that, Holly Rowe has in the World Series with the coaches. I think just that in general is just incredible. But specifically with the athlete, what are things that you've learned about how they think? Because there's common factors between the best, like the Olympians, the World Series finalists, all these athletes. What are those similarities that you've seen as the interviewer with some of these top athletes in the entire world?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'd say I think 2 things stand out to me. One is the mental side of the game, and the second one is just like not really paying attention to what other people are saying about you in terms of the media or social media, all those different aspects. And so I think a lot of the time, at least I hadn't thought about it as much how the mental game plays a role, but I think it's talked about more and more for these professional athletes or collegiate top athletes, as you said, from the Women's College World Series or anything like that. And so I think hearing about that from athletes, just how impactful that is, if that's visualizing before a game or just breathing or talking to themselves, everybody has their different thing. But I think that's something that's important to them. But also just not paying attention to what's going on outside. I think Oklahoma softball epitomizes that, to be quite honest. And I think you probably would agree with me there of just staying
Absolutely.
true to who they are because they've just been so dominant over the past decade, and so they're not worrying about what everybody else is saying or everybody gunning for them since everybody wants to take them down, right? And that can also apply to any other sport, honestly, in professional sports or collegiate sports. I think there's a lot of media noise, and I think there's a lot of noise on social media that can be good, but there's also a lot of downside with that. And so I think those 2 things are big things as well. But um there's definitely other components too, but I think those 2 stick out to me.
You're so right. The better you get, I feel like the more people start talking. I mean, Caitlin Clark, prime example. Like everybody was
Right.
like, she hasn't proved herself yet. She's not going to do much here. And she's out here setting records every time she, I think, hits the court. And she's also very good at kind of just not letting, and if she lets the people who have negative things to say get to her, it's only to fuel her.
Mhm.
And I've seen that happen with so many elite athletes too. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And I hope that's encouragement for any athlete or anyone in general that has people, hating on them for any sort of reason. It's probably just because you're doing really good things and they're trying to bring you down. But that's so cool. So from the mental aspect too, um, when you interviewed Steph Curry, did
Mhm.
he talk about that, or what did you guys talk about? Because I'm so curious what Steph Curry has to say about his game or how the team looked or how his mental game is.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, honestly, I think that was the most nervous I was for an interview at the Olympics because I had gone into the Olympics. We were put with different professional partners. We were separated from UNC, so I was with one other student working for a news outlet in North Carolina, and I knew they were interested in Steph Curry because he's one of the greatest basketball players of all time, period, but he's from North Carolina and from Davidson, right? And so I was like, "Okay," like, but in my mind, I'm like, "It's Steph Curry, right?" Like, okay, like, um, and so I interviewed him after Team USA played South Sudan in one of the pool play games, and they dominated, they played really well, but Steph only had 3 points, like, he did horrible, he didn't even make a three-pointer, like, that's one of the worst games he's literally had in his career, and I'm like, "Okay, now this is the only game I'm probably gonna talk to him because I wanna do the story earlier on in the Olympics." And so he talked about just different aspects of the game, but I think what really stuck out to me is I asked him about the Davidson thing, which he glowed about, just talking about getting to represent Davidson because Davidson's never had a basketball player, men or women, in the Olympic Games. Now, obviously, he's a gold medalist as well to add to his career accolades. But I also just asked about adjustments since they had over a dozen turnovers, and they had that for the first, like, 4 or 5 games, and I really liked how he talked about the team aspect, and I think this relates to the mental aspect of things, but how he was relying more so on his teammates, and he knew, like, they were all doing the time in the not just in the locker room talking to one another, picking their brains because 'cause they're all top level athletes, right? They're all from the NBA, from LeBron to AD, everybody in between, but the fact that they were looking in the film room as well, seeing what adjustments they needed to make, and just sort of sticking true to themselves. He wasn't panicked. They weren't stressed out even though, like, they had over a dozen turnovers. They weren't the greatest at points. They could have blown up the game, but I think that's what sort of stuck out to me with Steph, and it just seemed like he wasn't too phased at all about him struggling with his shooting that night, and as you saw, clearly he wasn't phased because then later on, Team USA wouldn't have won gold without him. The big time shooting against France in that last game, so that's
Oh
sort
my
of
gosh. Yeah. That was so incredible to watch. Were you at that game by chance, the gold medal game?
unfortunately, no, I was flying back, but I watched it
Mm.
on, like, the TV that they have on the airplane back.
Is it, like, so crazy watching someone that you literally interviewed, like, days before going to do that? Like,
It's
oh, that's
crazy.
so cool, especially, like, after a game where he didn't do that great, and you're just like, "There he is. I knew he was in there."
Yeah, I was like, "Okay, that's what he's talking about." My dad always jokes me, it's like a funny joke. It's definitely not, like, actually real life and it doesn't happen, but sometimes it's happened, like, 4 or 5 times that I've interviewed an athlete and then, like, soon after he has, like, a really good game or something, and my dad'll tease me. He'll be like, "Oh, well, you interviewed a man," and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't have that effect, like, that's God right there," but we always joke with that, and so we had to joke there 'cause but, I mean, it's Steph Curry, obviously, he's done what he's done. He leads all of the NBA in the history of the NBA in
Mhm.
three-pointers. So it wasn't me at all, but it was just funny to see him struggle, but then just bounce back like that. Like, I feel like we're used to seeing him do.
Yeah, and that he was super composed, after the game, like, he could have easily been, mad or upset, and, like, maybe he was a little, but I think
Mhm.
he sees the big picture, and that's one thing I think I see with, the greatest of the greats is, like, they see the big picture, like, one day doesn't define you, and I'm sure you see that too when you interview. I'm actually really curious, how do you watch these performances? As a journalist, do
Mhm.
you watch them solely for entertainment and then think about it later? Or as the games or just any of the performances in general are happening, just I want you to think like from the Olympics because you watch so many different events. Like, how are you watching it? Like, what are you looking for? What's standing out to you? Because I'm sure you think of it or watch it a little differently than we do.
Yeah, that's a funny question because I actually thought about that the other day. But in terms of watching the Olympics, I think you're right. Like you hit it right on the nail right there. I can't just watch it even though I want to so bad sometimes just as solely a fan like okay, like turn your brain off or whatever. Like it there's just something in me that like has to know more than just like okay, watch for fun if that makes sense. And so I think for me a lot of the time during the Olympics, while I had an idea of certain athletes I was covering from North Carolina or different events I was covering, I still wanted to find unique aspects to that to stand out from other stories that would be written because there's a lot of stories. It's the Olympics, right? People from all over the world are covering a lot of the same things. And so I think it was just sort of seeing what are little things going on, or what is happening with the fans and all those things, because there were no fans in Tokyo. And it was just so incredible to see the fan atmosphere at every event, especially track and field, just because of the enormous 70 plus
Mm,
thousand people in that stadium. And so I think for me, I try to think about that. And I also start writing a lot of the stories while the event's still going on, because I want to have an idea of what I want to ask the interviewee about after the game, but also to have that story quicker to my editor to have it up in a timely manner.
that's incredible. So you obviously saw that. I think you watched, if I remember looking at your stories correctly, Simone Biles when she won her last individual gold. Were you there for that?
I was there for not her last gold, because that was, I believe, vault, but I was there for beam and floor finals, which she got silver in floor. And then I was there for the all around final where she did win gold as
Yes,
well.
the
So I
all
saw
around.
her
That's what I
on
was
the
thinking of.
podium for sure.
Mhm. Wow. Okay, so when you watch, again,
Mhm.
you're probably in awe just like everybody else, when she does these things. But like seeing it in person, you get to see like what happens, after she does the thing, does the move, whatever, and then talks to her coaches and like gets back at it. You can probably see like facial expressions and, how she looks, how she prepares. Like, what do you see aside from what the television sees? Maybe with her or other elite athletes that maybe you were watching.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it was
Go ahead.
really cool for her just seeing interactions with teammates in general, which I think social media or the media did highlight a lot, which was really cool to see. Just with Jordan, I know they're teammates for a while, but also her and Suni were competing against one another, but also together. And so it was fun to get to see their interactions. But after, they started vault, had her double Yurchenko pike, which is truly an incredible skill. I like watch it and my jaw drops every single time, because I'm like, how in the world is that even possible? Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
insane. And so I think it was cool just to see her composure, because usually you don't see her behind literally ever. I can't remember another time that I've watched her gymnastics career. And it didn't seem like she had seen a time either, based on our press conference after she won, but that she was behind. And Rebecca Andrade from Brazil was doing really well, considering just how strong she had started the meet, but also Simone hadn't done super well on bars. And so she wasn't in first place at the halfway point, and I think that was surprising to her. But it was funny to see, like, her looking up to her husband, Jonathan Owens, who was in the stands. The Bears were kind enough to give him time off of training camp, which was awesome. And like talking to him, we could see it a little bit on the jumbotron, but you could just sort of see her looking, I think, in that general direction as well, just sort of being like, oh, like, am I doing okay? Like, where am I at in the standings and that type of thing. But it was cool just her being so composed. I think everybody assumes like, oh, she's just handles the pressure, which I could never imagine the pressure she feels being the athlete that she is, right? And so the fact that there was like over 4 plus dozen cameras surrounding her after bars, and she's just sitting there sort of like closing her eyes, seeming to sort of try to compose herself, take a deep breath, just sort of reset, was just crazy to me, because she has cameras around her constantly and she just doesn't seem phased at it by all. And I think that sort of is the epitome of those top level athletes that have been able to handle those different aspects of it. And so I think that is one of the things that stuck out to me outside of just her performance, which is record breaking as always on the
Mm-hmm.
competition floor.
Have you seen her documentary that's out?
Yes, I
You watched
literally
it? Me
cannot
too.
wait to watch the next episodes.
I know, because they're going to be about this past Olympics, right? I'm
Right.
assuming. Okay. Yeah. So if people listening haven't watched it, I think you totally should, because I was one of those people that was like, why is she backing out? In Tokyo, like um, when she literally was just like, I cannot do this. And I didn't understand what the twisties were, but I figured out like they're basically the yips. And if you're flying like 10 feet in the air, that's an exaggeration, I think, and then trying to land and you don't feel like you can land it, like you could literally die. So like I have a newfound respect for Simone. Not that I didn't already before, but it was kind of just one of those where I was like, you really get to know the pressure that she's under and how supportive her husband is and how um from like a mental aspect, what you have to have right in order to do what she does, which is literally like a unicorn, right? Like there's nobody out there that does that. But yeah, I have a newfound respect for her and I'm with you. I can't wait. for the next episodes to come out. I think they're going to be so good.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And it was just really cool to see her live time for me. Like, it was a cool time because I feel like I related to her as an athlete with mental health things, or just like never hearing it talked about of high profile athletes. And so the fact that she was willing to use that stage on the biggest, she had so much pressure going into Tokyo. It was insurmountable. I don't even know how it was possible to juggle that type of pressure as one individual.
And her
But the
family
fact,
wasn't there. And like,
right,
yeah.
as you said, nobody was there she could rely on, nobody was in the stands, like, you never have meets like that, and you never have any of those circumstances, getting tested every day, all those dynamics, and so I think the fact that she stood up for that spoke more volumes than people ever would have imagined. It was amazing, and it had a really great ripple effect.
Yes. Okay. So closing out on Paris, what are some of the top moments that like they're ingrained in your brain for forever and ever that you don't want to ever forget?
I would say seeing Simone Biles win all around gold, that has to be up there, but also the interaction between her, Rebecca Andrade, and Jordan Childs after the floor final. I know there's been things with the medal things there, but the fact of the respect of all of them and seeing them interact as well. Press conferences, it was really sweet to see that. I'd also say Steph Curry has to be up there, but in terms of other competitions, I would say the men's 100-meter final was insane.
Whoa.
Also, like, some of the relays for track and field in person, like, it was just truly incredible. I think the women's 200-meter, Gabby Thomas taking it, obviously Noah Lyles won the 100. I think those were really cool. I also had a chance to interview Katie Ledecky, so that was amazing to get to see her in person, and she was so sweet and down to earth. Sometimes it's really cool to just be like, "Wow, these people, we know they're normal people, but when they act like it too, it's really sweet." And so I'd say a lot of those were things. I think it's hard to narrow down, but those are just a few to name some.
Wow. I almost said Lady Kadeki. Katie Ledecky. You got to interview her. So she's one of those that like, again, a unicorn. You're just like, how is she so good? But when you said she was just down to earth, like, what are those signs that kind of gave you that? Or what did she talk about that kind of made her feel more like just a regular human and not a unicorn?
Yeah, I talked to her one of the days after her qualifications that she obviously qualified for, won a lot of medals in Paris, but she just seemed really relaxed and chill just based on the interactions. I think some of it's nonverbals with like eye contact or body language and things like that. But the way she talks too, it's just felt more like conversational, talking to a friend, versus some of the time, it feels more like interviewee type things. And so she was really kind, answering different questions of so wide range of questions, but it was just nice to hear her perspective. And I mean, she's one of the goats of her sport too. If we're talking about Simone, you have to talk about Katie Ledecky in that same air, I feel like, in their sports respectively. And so it was really sweet to see her in person and be personable as well.
That's amazing. I still can't believe you're just starting your sophomore year of college. Like, you've done so many incredible things, and I mean, the best is yet to come. That's Pat Murphy's line, but I think it's true. Like, you're up to so many cool things, and I love that you're just a go-getter, and you don't take no for an answer. You just figure out ways to make things happen. So I have no doubt that the best is truly yet to come for you. But do you have any sort of inspiration for anybody listening? Maybe it's an athlete who kind of, dabbles into this and maybe wants to make this a thing for them. Like, what is some advice you would give to that athlete who maybe wants to get into journalism and be like you?
Yeah, I think some advice I would give is to just be willing to give it a try. Like, you don't have to do it long term. If you don't like it, there's no harm in that, but willing to try it and be outside of your box. I think I've learned that a lot, and I'm trying to still get better to it at this current time, because sometimes I just like to be in my comfort zone and just, okay, I know I'm better at this or things like that. But being willing to stretch yourself more and more, because I think that's helped me a lot. And that could be in sports, it could be on the competition field, or it could be outside of it in academics, in a club, or journalism, right? You can try it. And if you don't like it, that's okay. But it's better to know that you tried something and more so weighed your options versus just being decision more so like making a decision and being like, okay, I'm just going to stick with this, if that makes sense. And so I think for me, I would encourage other people listening to just try something that you wouldn't have originally thought you would wanna try, and if you try it once and you don't like it, okay, that's fine, and then if you try it 10 times and you really like it, hey, there you found something that you're passionate about and can possibly wanna pursue as a career long term.
I think the key thing you said there was to just challenge yourself, right? Like you probably have butterflies every single time you have a microphone in your hand and you're about to go interview somebody big, right? Like we all need those moments often. And I think you don't have you ever, been interviewing someone and it's not like you black out, but you kind of sit there and you're like, is this, is
Oh,
this
100%.
is this really
Absolutely.
happening? Yeah, but like that doesn't come without stretching yourself, like you said, and challenging yourself and trying new things. And we know, like, I'm sure there have been times where things haven't worked out very smoothly for you,
Mhm.
right? Like, there's probably one or two moments in your head that you're like, yeah, that didn't go well, but that's part of it, right? And you're still here, you're still wanting to keep learning and growing, and that's part of it. So whether you are in sports, like you said, or not. Like there's so many ways you can do that. That was such a good answer, Anna. That was awesome. Um, take a minute or two to talk about where people can follow you and find you. You can talk about Speak Up Sports podcast, and all the things you're up to. Obviously, you're a student, which is like number one priority. So you're probably not going to be whipping out an episode every day. But where can people follow you and find some of your work?
Yes, great question. So, as you said, I am a student at UNC Chapel Hill, so I won't be doing any podcast episodes this fall, but I did have season 7 that launched and finished over the summer. And so you can find my podcast. It's called the Speak Up Sports Podcast, but it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, it will be on that platform. So I have over 100 episodes now, which is crazy to say because I remember when I was starting it, you were on one of my first, like, I think the 8th episode ever, I think it was. And so long we've come with that. And also you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter. I don't use Twitter as much, but Instagram if you want. I have a podcast one, my personal one, but those are just a couple different avenues that you can see different podcasts or stories, everything in between.
Perfect, perfect. And I will make sure all of that is in the show notes. And to be honest, I'm surprised as a journalism major, you're not on Twitter more because that's where I get a lot of my news.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to get better at it. I've been on it more like in the past 6 months than I was before. But I think growing up I wasn't on Twitter a ton. And so I'm getting better. As you said, there are a lot of news on there. So I got to get better at looking at that.
All good in your own time. Good luck this semester. We're all supporting you. Thank you so much for spending, especially because you're still on a little bit left of your Labor Day break, but for spending a little time with us. I'm truly honored, especially because I know how busy you are.
Well,
But I'm so proud of you. This has been so fun to watch from afar, and I can't wait to see what's next.
thank you for all your kindness and thank you as well for having me on the podcast and I love seeing all the things that you're doing too and I can't wait to see what you're continuing to do.
You bet. I can't wait for more, and I already can't wait for you to come back on.